Morning. I'd like to take a look at Genesis 3 this morning, and we'll be taking a look at verses 1 through 7. Genesis 3, 1 through 7. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God say, 'You shall not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, "You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. Last time I was here, we're taking a look at why we are here, the purpose why God made us. And we are here to fill the world and to be made in the image of him and to represent him throughout the world wherever we go. And I have a picture I'd like to begin with this morning, The Fall of Man by Michael Triegel. Michael Triegel is probably he is the foremost artist, religious artist in Germany, perhaps in the world. Michael Triegel was born in 1968 in East Germany, the GDR, and so he was raised as an atheist. Karl Marx said that communism begins with atheism, and he was an atheist. He painted this painting in 2007. And if we take a look at it, many of his paintings have skulls. This is a motif. He's an atheist. And this is the world. This box is the world. Spilled on its side, and it's a lifeless world. It's a dead world. But you'll notice the apple up in the top corner, and his painting, he belongs to the new Leipzig school, and he wants to imitate and copy Renaissance art. And he also has a little bit of surrealism mixed in there. So you'll recognize that apple. It's a symbol of temptation, of desire, of sin. And in the lower left-hand corner, you may not be able to see that. That is a little sepia photograph of Michelangelo's Fall of Man, where Adam and Eve are offered this fruit, this apple. And this is his view of life. This is an atheist's view of life. He's grown up in the GDR. He's seen how hopeless life really is. What do? You just scrabble and try and get along as best you can. And that's his impression of the world. But I show this picture, and I've chosen Michael Triegel because there's a good story. There's a good point behind this. One of the bishops in Germany, after the two Germanys were reunited, hired him, commissioned Michael Triegel to paint a portrait of Pope Benedict. And you may have seen this very impressive picture, almost like a photograph. And Michael Triegel began to get more and more commissions and doing religious paintings. And so he started to look at the Bible. He started to look at the Christian story. And I'm happy to say, in 2014, Michael Triegel was baptized. He, an atheist, raised as an atheist, saw the truth in Christianity. And so he's embraced that, and now he's painting religious paintings throughout the world. And if you haven't heard of him before now, you just keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and you will see some of his works. Now, in the fall of man, we take a look and we see that death has come from that. And we've taken a look, as I said, at when man was created, when humankind were created, God made male and female. So today we have a lot of Marxist thoughts, ideas going around. And as we look through this, we're going to see that the same scheme, the same temptation that Satan used back then is being played out in our society today. And our society seems mad. It seems like it's going crazy. And we can see the various stages. And we're going to take a look at that. First of all, the mockery of God. You make fun of God. You laugh at him. And then after you've done that, you try and nullify the word of God. And then you try to say to humans, you can create your own society. You can be your own boss. And the end result is this, it's death. And Michael Triegel and anybody who was raised under the communist system has seen that. And yet now, today, here we are floating closer and closer to these Marxist ideas, renamed, of course. Now, even though mankind was made, we have male and female, and there's no problem there. We've got people today, these critical theorists, and they want to say, well, there's oppressor and oppressed, and male is oppressing female and whatnot. Well, we realize that we didn't live happily ever after. And here we see the beginning of that split in Genesis 3. So let's get right down to it and let's take a look at it. And we want to see how Satan has worked, because how he worked back then is how he's working today. And he works it personally in our own lives. We'll see this. And he's worked it within society. And this is the same game plan over and over again, repeated. And Satan starts out by saying, did God say, you shall not eat from any tree in the garden? So this is the first tactic that Satan uses all the time. Did God actually say this? And the implication here is that that is ridiculous. How could God say this? How could God do this? How can you follow a God like that? He's deceptive. Now we know who the real deceiver is. It's Satan. But this is a new thing for Eve. And some of the ideas that we're having today are new to people. Those of us who are older, who were raised during the Cold War, we know to be very cautious, to be very wary about some of these thoughts that are going around. But the younger generation aren't aware of this. So it's new to them, and this is new to Eve. And he's just deliberately planting the idea of doubt. God's rules are ridiculous. They're laughable. God does not act wisely. And we can see this all the time. Just flip on the news and you'll see some leading to a news story. Oh, so-and-so says this, but does it actually work? And they're trying to cause doubt all the time. And you've probably been with other people and they start an argument with you and they're trying to cause doubt. They may not even have the facts to back it up, but they try and create doubt in your mind. Now, to her credit, Eve is going to rebuff Satan or try to rebuff him. But already here we've got a second point here. He's slipped in an idea that he's changed the focus. And we see this today with people who are trying to change words. They're trying to change the focus. Let's reset the narrative and get people. They're trying to fool us and deceive us. And he's already got her focused on that tree. She's got all kinds of trees from which they can eat and they enjoy them all, but he's trying to switch it away. And he's done that. And Eve says to him, well, you should not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden. So, well, yeah, okay, there's one tree we cannot eat. She's focusing now on that. But she adds to it, nor shall you touch it or you shall die. Now, God didn't say anything about don't touch it. He just said, stay away from it, leave it alone, don't touch it. And I'm sure you've seen the same situation. You take it with a child in some way. Eve is like a child, you know, don't eat that. It's for supper. Don't eat it till after dinner. The kid is wanting to go, is now focused on that and he wants or she wants to try it out. So she's added a little bit more. And this gives Satan a springboard that he can go back and rebuff her now that he's got her focused on that. And he says to her, you will not die. So here's the second stage, to nullify what God has said. Satan is spinning it around. Nothing's going to happen to you. There are not going to be consequences. Sound familiar? Today, we have this all the time being repeated. Nothing's going to happen. You'll be fine. God didn't tell you the whole truth. And then he jumps ahead in verse 5. When you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. See, God is withheld from you. God doesn't have your best interests in mind. He's the one who's being deceptive, and he knows if you're going to eat this, this is going to happen to you. Now, we see a little bit of truth here, and we're going to see this today in our own society, in our own temptations. There's a little bit of truth. If you offer something blatantly wrong in front of somebody, they may reject it, but you mix it with truth a little bit, and more of the deception, and that's easier to fool or to gull somebody. So God is holding out on you. God is deceptive. God is unfair. God is ridiculous. And every temptation that we have tells us we are missing out. It doesn't matter what that temptation is. And advertisers jump on this all the time. You are missing out if you do not. Oh yeah, maybe I am missing out. Maybe God is holding out from us. So the second scheme is freedom. And we're hearing a lot of freedom, and freedom has different definitions. And the Marxists, the critical theorists, they have a different definition of freedom than what you and I might have. And Satan has a different idea of what freedom is here as well. But you are going to be free if you eat this. Look at what good it's going to do for you. You'll be like God. You'll know good and evil. Your eyes will be open. Sin will make you free. You get to call the slots. This is going to be liberating. And we hear the same all the time sayings and whatnot that are being put out there. Cast off your shackles. You're sovereign. You know what's best for yourself, not God. I hate saying this. It makes me sound like some of these people that are saying that, but I'm just warning you, eat and be like God. But what we don't understand is, or what she doesn't understand, we as well, is freedom has different limitations. There are different things about freedom that sometimes we forget. And a very simple illustration would be teenagers. Anybody who is still in high school. Freedom is going to be when they get out of school. They cannot wait to get out of school. Then they are going to truly be free. But all of us who have gone that route, all of us who are on this side of high school, know that there are new responsibilities. Who's going to provide you the food? Who's going to provide you the shelter? How are you going to get along in the life? You don't have mom and dad always looking after you. So freedom in some ways is overrated. Children don't realize it. Eve doesn't realize, it's this freedom that he's offering us, opening our eyes. It does not come out like what we think or what we hope or what we plan. Now, this idea of sin, a lot of people, modernists, tried to sweep that away. Oh, let's get rid of sin. There's no such thing of sin. Well, maybe we should take a look at the nature of sin and redefine sin. Because really, sin is anything that's going to either hurt us or hurt other people. And you look at all the restrictions, so-called restrictions that we have in the Bible, everything there is a warning to protect us, to guard us from hurting ourselves or from hurting other people. Oftentimes, and this is guilty, I'm guilty just as well as other people, sometimes we only think one step ahead. We have to have 2 or 3 levels ahead of thinking. People who are very good chess players, they make one move, but they're not just thinking of that one move. They're looking 2 or 3 moves ahead. And Eve does not do that. She's just thinking, oh, I'm going to open my eyes. What are the implications of having your eyes opened? We're going to submit to this sin. We're going to accept this temptation. What are the consequences? Well, Satan says there are no consequences. But we know that that's wrong. We know that's false. There are always consequences. And we know it. How many times have you tried something and you fail? There are consequences and you go ahead the next time. Why? This time it's different. The 4 most dangerous words I've heard people say. This time it's different. It's never different. Now, right now we have a lot of snowbanks out there, and I've heard on the TV, tell your children, stay off the snowbanks. And you've probably been told, stay off the snowbanks when you were a child. Teachers used to tell us all the time. Children, first thing they want to do is get on that snowbank and run along it. They don't see the consequences. What happens if they fall? Well, we're not going to fall, or there's not going to be a car coming at the time. Always you hear about children getting hit because they fall up the snowbank in front of a car. Or the parents, if it's summertime, don't play in the street, especially a busy street. Kids want to play in the street. You don't have the wisdom to tell me, mom or dad, I'm not going to get hit. Well, you may or you may not. And that's the way we are. We don't realize that there will be consequences. When God gives us rules, it's for our own good. It's for our own protection. Do you really hate your child if you tell them stay off the snowbank? Or you hate your child when you say, well, you can play in the backyard, but you can't play in the street? No, it's for our own good. And God has laid down rules for us. But Satan says, you can be free. You can be free. He just doesn't show us the end result. Now, Michael Triegel, he knows the end result. He saw the freedom that they had, the so-called freedom that they had in the GDR. And if you talk to other people who've lived under a communist state, they'll tell you the freedom that they actually do not have, but the freedom that they desire. Now, for the fall, we see verse 6. She takes a look, and this is what advertisers play on. You'll see this all the time. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food. What do you mean the tree was good for food? She had all kinds of trees that were good for food, but this one's good for food. It was a delight to the eyes. I'm sure the other trees were a delight to the eyes as well. And that the tree was to be desired to make one wise. There's really what we have to underscore. She took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Interesting. Adam is there as well. And he doesn't step up and say, hey, wait a minute, this is a bad idea. Nope, don't let's eat it. He gets in there as well. He may or may not have heard these words. He's listening, he's watching. Well, you know, you took it. He may not have been deceived, but he tries it anyway. What happens? Well, this is supposed to make her wise. This offers this promise. She can and he can both be now like God, understanding good, understanding evil. This is what's going to satisfy them. The other thing doesn't satisfy them. And we see it perpetually worked out. Eve is doubting God. She sees this freedom offered to her, and sin looks good. And sin always looks good initially, until you consider the consequences. If sin did not look good, we wouldn't try it. There's no sin that doesn't look good. No sin sounds terrible. No sin looks bad. No sin is going to make you look bad in front of your other people, or I should say no temptation does. That's what we think, or we wouldn't try it. But always temptations turn out unlike what we planned. They don't make us look wise in front of other people. They don't satisfy us. They will never satisfy us. So what Satan promises is not what is imagined. And these sins that we have, these temptations that we have, that we face, they will never turn out the way we hope, the way they plan. What does it bring? Well, their eyes were open. That part was true. They realized they were naked, they're ashamed, and they sew leaves, fig leaves together to protect themselves from God. So there's now a barrier that has gone up with God. They knew it right away. They had severed the link. And ultimately, that link would lead to death, as we have seen. Application: think of the outcome of sin in your own life. We all know what has happened to us. Whenever we give into a temptation, has it ever satisfied us? Has it ever been the one that, oh yeah, now life is going to be the greatest? No. Remember that. Think about it. It never works out. But Satan, the thing is, keeps using this same scheme, this same game plan over and over again, and we keep falling for it. And why do we fall for it? Because there's a little hook, which isn't mentioned here, because this is the first time it's happened. But in our own lives, you think about it. There's one thing. Why do you try it again? Because Satan says, last time you did it wrong. If you try a little bit harder, if you try it just a different way, those 4 words again, this time it's different. Work a little harder, try a little, approach it from a little bit different, and then it's going to satisfy you. And does it? No, it does not. It is just as empty as it was, and it will always be just as empty as it was. I just want to bring in a movie. I don't really like to do this, but if you've ever seen Peter Cook and Dudley Moore in the movie Bedazzled, Dudley Moore is offered 7 wishes by Peter Cook, the devil. And every time he says, well, try it this way, try it this way, try it this way. 7 times he strikes out all 7 times. It doesn't work. And it's a humorous movie, but it shows us, yeah, this is a way. Why does he keep falling for it? Why do we keep falling for it? Because there's that hook. Next time it's going to work out because it will be different, but it isn't. So when you face temptations, remember, we can remember, unlike Adam and Eve here, we can remember it has not worked out in the past. But the second thing that helps us to stand up to temptation is to appreciate the goodness of God. The song we sang this morning, if God is near us, temptations lose their charm. So appreciate the goodness of God. If we forget that God is operating for our own good, and here Satan has cast doubt on God, and Eve is starting to doubt God, if we don't think that God operates for our good, we are susceptible because we will not trust him, and we're susceptible to temptations. I'd like to wrap up by taking a look at James. James 1, starting verse 16, he says, "Do not be deceived, my beloved." And that's what I really want to leave with you this morning. Eve was deceived. Adam went along with her. Don't let us be deceived. Every generous act of giving with every perfect gift is it from Satan? Is it from his lies? No. Every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, from whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. God is the one who doesn't change. He doesn't change the rules. He's laid them out for us. He's made it plain for us. He's out for our good, and he's not going to change. This variation or shadow, James has in mind the moon. We look at the moon, we have a half moon, a crescent moon, full moon. God is not like that. He's steady. He's there. He's our constant rock. He's our pillar. He is not going to deceive us. So I leave that with you, but I cannot close the lesson without coming back to Jesus, because Jesus is like us, the Son of God, but the Son of Man as well. He underwent temptations. And if we take a look at the temptation that Jesus faced when he was facing off Satan, first of all, he knew Scripture. He knew what was right. He knew what was wrong. And secondly, he had an unwavering trust in God's goodness. And that is how he was able to live the perfect life. And that is how we can stand up to temptations. We can avoid being deceived. Of course, all of us have been deceived. All of us have fallen into temptation. And there's only one answer for that. And that, of course, is Christ. Because later on in the passage, Eve is told, you are going to have a son, the seed of you coming down, and he's going to crush Satan. And we know that that was Christ. That was Jesus. He has crushed the head of Satan. He has destroyed him. And if we decide to follow Jesus, we place our unwavering trust in him, we can defeat Satan and not be deceived. Thank you.